Today, we have a remarkable story of resilience and change. The story of the Muse brothers of Virginia will be one you don't easily forget. So sit back, get comfortable as I introduce you to the Muse brothers. George and Willie Muse were the oldest of 5 siblings born into a close family of Harriett Muse in the remote Jim Crow South of Truvine, Virginia. Born with albinism, a genetic condition, they grew up with skin so pale it was almost translucent, and white hair, their eyes a piercing shade of blue. Their mother Harriet watched over them with protective fierceness, knowing that their unique appearance would attract curiosity and all too often cruelty from those who didn't understand. But it was their nystagmus, the uncontrollable, rapid eye movement that accompanied their albinism, which posed a significant challenge. The condition made their vision erratic and blurry. As they grew from infants into young boys, George and Willie squinted and tilted their heads to navigate the bright and confusing world around them. It became a familiar sight in the small town of Truvine, a community near Roanoke, Virginia, where everyone knew the Muse family. They even had scowls etched onto their foreheads at a very young age from squinting. Their mother's heart ached for them as she witnessed the struggles they faced just to do simple tasks like reading or playing outside. Much like their neighbors, the Muse family relied on sharecropping tobacco for their livelihood. The brothers watched their family toil under the unforgiving sun. Despite their vision, they took on the role of pest control with surprising enthusiasm. With their heightened sense of hearing and touch, they became adept at identifying the slightest rustle or movement in the leaves, and their quick reflexes made them a formidable force against the creatures that threatened their crops and their livelihood. Although their mother Harriet cared for her sons the best she could, their life was a daily grind of grueling manual labor and the looming threat always of racial violence. Shelton, a man with a penchant for exploiting human oddities for profit, recognized the potential of the albino boys and saw dollar signs in their unique appearance. He approached the family with a deceptive offer to take George and Willie on tour, promising fame and fortune that could change their lives. The family would soon agree, not fully understanding the dark path this choice would lead them down. Shelton was searching for sideshow attractions that could match the popularity of renowned acts like the conjoined twins from Thailand known as Chang and Ang, or the Dwarf Brothers from Ohio, labeled the Wild Men of Borneo by circus showman P.T. Barnum. In the spring, as wagons rolled into Truvine, the boys were intrigued by the performers' glamour and promise of a life beyond the confines of their country existence. Boys' first performance was met with a mix of awe and horror. Audiences couldn't believe such a condition existed and flocked to see them. But as the circus moved on, so did the truth behind their involvement. When it was time for the circus to leave, the Muse family waited anxiously for the boys to return, unaware of the grim reality that awaited them. Shelton had no intention of letting go of his lucrative assets. They were promoted under various names, including Eastman's Monkey Men and the Ethiopian Monkey Men. The Muse brothers were now known as Eco and Iko, and they became a sensation. Their days were filled with performances. They were treated as less than human, denied their identities, and reduced to mere spectacles for the entertainment of others. Shelton knew that their innocence and lack of understanding would make them an easy target. He kept them isolated from their family and community, feeding them a steady diet of lies about their supposed fame and fortune. The brothers' act grew increasingly sensationalized at a time when disabilities were often exploited for public curiosity and individuals faced systematic discrimination. Shelton saw the potential for substantial profit in the young Muse brothers. In the circus world, George and Willie Muse's days were long and demanding. They weren't allowed to learn new skills, their education denied. They were also told that their mother had died. One day, a circus photographer gave them a banjo and a guitar and asked them to pose with these instruments for photos. At first, their manager thought it was a joke because he didn't believe the brothers knew how to play any music. But as soon as George plucked the strings of the banjo and Willie's fingers danced over the guitar, it was clear they had a gift. Their music was raw and natural. They had discovered an untapped talent that brought them a small semblance of joy in their very bleak existence. During the grueling days of World War I, the circus took on a more somber tone as the country's attention shifted to the battlefields of Europe. Yet amidst the chaos, a strange harmony grew between George and Willie and their newfound instruments. It's a long way to Tipperary, a popular tune that resonated with the longings of soldiers for their distant homes. Up to London came an I say, as the streets are with Willie walking. Anthem for the boys. They could relate to this song. As the years rolled by, the brothers' appearances evolved with the changing tastes of the audience. They became outfitted in exotic garb, designed to feed the public's fascination. Their white hair was now transformed into a mane of dreadlocks, a hairstyle that only added to their mystique. Big banners called them the ambassadors from Mars and the sheep-headed men. Tales for each new venue, crafting a fresh narrative for the curious and eager to believe. One week, George and Willie were the lost descendants of an ancient tribe discovered in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. The next, they were shipwreck survivors from an island of albino cannibals. The stories grew more outrageous, but their popularity grew. The banner in October 1927 was a stroke of genius. Are the ambassadors from Mars? It questioned, tapping into the era's fascination with extraterrestrial life. The boys were dressed up in garments that shimmered under the tent lights. Step right up, folks, the barker called out to the gathering crowds. Witness the wonders of the universe. Eco and Iko, the sheep-headed men from the Red Planet. According to the storyline, Eco and Iko had allegedly been discovered in 1923 emerging from a hole near the wreckage of a spacecraft in the Mojave Desert. On a warm autumn day at the Roanoke Fairgrounds, George strummed the mandolin while Willie's guitar sang out a melody that seemed to tug at the heartstrings of every soul present. The crowd was a sea of unfamiliar faces, their eyes wide with wonder and curiosity, but suddenly George's gaze locked onto one face that was very familiar. "Look, Willie," George whispered, nudging his brother with his elbow. "It's her." Willie's eyes followed George's gaze and his heart skipped a beat as he recognized the unmistakable profile of his mother, Harriett, standing defiantly at the edge of the crowd. Their music trailed off as they set their instruments aside and stumbled over each other in their haste to reach her. The audience watched with a mix of confusion and curiosity as the sheep-headed men abandoned their act. It was the reunion they had dreamed of but never truly believed would ever happen because their mother was dead. Harriet's face washed with relief and joy, her eyes full of tears as she held her long-lost sons. The circus manager watched from the shadows with a frown deepening on his face. This was not part of the act. He had kept the young men in the dark about their mother's existence for years, spinning tales of her death to keep them under control, but here she was, a living testament to all of his deception. When the word got out, the press took an interest in the unusual reunion. Newspaper headlines blazed with outrage as the public learned of Shelton's cruel trickery and the family's desperate struggle to find their lost sons. Journalists flocked to Truevine, their cameras flashing and pencils scribbling as they recorded every heartbreaking detail. The story of George and Willie's separation and eventual reunion in such an unexpected circumstance gripped the nation's heartstrings. The court case was a grueling battle, but Harriet's unwavering love and determination to find her sons had paid off. The judge ruled in her favor, declaring George and Willie free from the clutches of the circus, finally allowed to return home to the warm embrace of their mother and the quiet life of sharecropping that now felt like a sanctuary. Life after the circus was indeed a stark contrast. The now men had to relearn the simplicity of their childhood home, the comfort of their mother's care, and even get to know their family again. The legacy of their circus days still etched on their faces. The townsfolk knew of their fame and the ordeal they had faced, but some struggled to still look beyond the fabricated personas of Eco and Iko to see the real George and Willie beneath. In 1928, the brothers made a surprising decision to return to the circus, but this time on their own terms. Having discovered their voices and their music, they insisted on performing not as only sideshow freaks, but as entertainers, sharing themselves with the world. Their comeback act was a stark contrast to their previous life in the circus, because they were now in control. Their performances took them to various places, from Buckingham Palace to the Hawaiian Islands, where they shared the stage with sword swallowers, giants, and even some of the actors who would later go on to appear as Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz. The late 1920s had brought a newfound respect to the world of sideshows, and George and Willie had become celebrities in their own right. They were no longer just the sheep-headed men, but so much more. Back in Truvine, the news of their success reached Harriet's ears through letters and the occasional newspaper article that had made its way to her doorstep. With every dollar they sent home, she felt a glimmer of hope shine through the cracks of their shack's walls. The money that George and Willie earned was more than she had ever seen. Carefully, she saved it. Harriet eventually used the funds to buy a small farm, leaving her lifetime of struggling behind her for good. Years later, in 1942, the unthinkable happened. Harriet passed away from heart failure, leaving her sons with a legacy that was more than just their newfound independence. The farm they had worked so hard for became theirs, a symbol of her enduring love and sacrifice. They sold it and bought a house in Roanoke, where they retired and spent their remaining years. George Muse eventually succumbed to heart failure as well. He had lived a long and difficult life, one filled with the bittersweet taste of success and the pain of exploitation. His final moments were spent in the embrace of his family, his blue eyes finally at peace as he took his last breath. The news of George's passing reached Willie like a thunderclap. Despite the years of separation and the hardships they had faced, the bond between the brothers remained unbroken. Willie felt the weight of his brother's absence, as if a piece of him had been taken away. But Willie's spirit was not so easily doused. He took solace in music that they had discovered together, playing it on the porch of their Roanoke home, a hobby that had sustained him through a life of trials. Eventually, Willie also passed away at the remarkable age of 108. Willie and George are buried together along with their beloved mother at the Williams Memorial Park in Roanoke, Virginia. If you're in the area, stop by and say hello to this truly remarkable family. Thank you for watching and listening. We truly appreciate you all. We'll see you next time on the Hillbilly Files.